Hello, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you tonight about black holes. But before we get to that, I need to tell you about something that happened at the grocery store last Thursday. I was standing in the cereal aisle. You know, the one at Leicester's Market that has the fluorescent light that buzzes a little bit, and I was trying to decide between two boxes of Raisin Bran. They were the exact same brand, same price, but one box was pushed a little further back on the shelf, and I thought, well, maybe that one is fresher. Maybe someone looked at the front one and decided they didn't want it for some reason I can't see. And I stood there for probably 3 minutes, just holding both boxes, one in each hand, trying to feel if one was heavier, trying to determine if there was any meaningful difference between these two identical boxes of cereal. Then I realized I don't even like Raisin Bran that much. I think about that sometimes, how we can spend so much time on decisions that don't really matter, while the universe is out there doing these incredible, violent, impossible things. While stars are collapsing, while light is being bent, while time itself is stretching like taffy near the edge of something we can't even see. I bought the front box, by the way. Seemed fair. So, black holes. I first learned about them in Mr. Patterson's 8th grade science class. He had this poster on the wall. You might have seen one like it, with a sort of funnel shape, like a whirlpool, and a little marble rolling down into it. He said that's what space-time looks like near a black hole. Everything gets pulled toward the center. And I remember thinking, well, that looks like the drain in my grandmother's kitchen sink when you let the water out. Mr. Patterson said that wasn't exactly right, but that it wasn't exactly wrong either. He said sometimes the universe works on the same principles whether you're looking at something as big as a black hole or as small as a drain. Gravity pulls things down. Things spiral. Things fall. He was a good teacher. He retired 4 years ago, and now he works part-time at the hardware store. Sometimes I see him there, in the paint aisle, helping someone choose between eggshell and satin finish. And I think about how he used to explain the death of stars, and now he's explaining the benefits of primer. Both seem important, really. A black hole forms when a star dies, but not just any star. It has to be a big star, really big, at least 8 times the mass of our sun, though some are much bigger. Our sun, by the way, will never become a black hole. It's too small. When it dies, in about 5 billion years, it'll just expand into a red giant, swallow up Mercury and Venus, maybe Earth, and then collapse into a white dwarf. Just a small, dense, slowly cooling ember in space, which is a relief, I think. But these big stars, when they run out of fuel, when they've burned through all their hydrogen and helium and everything else they can burn, they don't go gently. There's nothing left to hold them up against their own gravity. So they collapse. The core implodes, and then it explodes. This is called a supernova, and for just a moment, that one dying star can outshine an entire galaxy of stars. I think about that sometimes when I'm having a bad day. How even ending can be bright. After the supernova, if the star was big enough, what's left keeps collapsing. Smaller and smaller, denser and denser. The atoms get crushed. The electrons get crushed into the protons, forming neutrons. And it keeps going, until all that mass, maybe 20 or 30 times the mass of our sun, gets compressed into a point, a singularity. That's what we call it, a singularity. A place where the normal rules break down, and around that singularity there's a boundary, the event horizon. That's the point of no return. Once something crosses that line, it can't come back, not ever, not even light. That's why they're called black holes. Not because they're a hole in space exactly, but because they're so dense, and their gravity is so strong, that light itself can't escape. Light, which travels at 186,000 miles per second, gets trapped. I tried to explain this to my neighbor Gene once, while we were shoveling snow off our driveways. He said it sounded like the time his truck got stuck in the mud out by Henderson's farm, and even the tow truck couldn't pull it out. I said, well, sort of. But imagine if the mud was invisible, and also if getting stuck in it meant you could never exist in the normal flow of time again. He said that sounded worse than his truck. Here's something I find comforting, though. We can't see black holes. Not directly. They don't emit light. They don't reflect light. But we know they're there because we can see their effects. We can see stars orbiting around something invisible. We can see gas and dust swirling into a disk around a point in space, heating up, glowing bright before it disappears. We can see light bending around them, creating these strange distortions called gravitational lensing, where the light from stars behind the black hole gets warped and stretched. It's like when you know someone loves you, not because they say it all the time, but because of the little things they do, the way they remember how you take your coffee, the way they check to make sure you got home okay, the way they're quiet with you when you need quiet. You can't see love exactly, but you can see its effects. That's maybe not a scientific comparison, but it's what I thought about. There's a black hole at the center of our galaxy. It's called Sagittarius A star, or SGRA. If you're writing it down, it's about 4 million times the mass of our sun, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's actually considered a relatively small, supermassive black hole. Some galaxies have black holes that are billions of times the mass of the sun. I can't really imagine that. 4 million is already hard enough. But here's the thing. That black hole, sitting right there in the center of our Milky Way, about 26,000 light years away from us, is part of why our galaxy exists the way it does. Its gravity helps hold things together. Stars orbit around it in these careful ancient paths, which means that this object, this thing that destroys everything that gets too close to it, that breaks the rules of physics, that even traps light, is also, in a way, keeping us safe, keeping things in order. I think about that when I'm worried about something. How sometimes the things we're afraid of are also the things that give our lives structure, like how I'm afraid of disappointing people. But that fear is also what makes me show up on time and try my best and remember birthdays. Or how Gene is afraid of being alone, which is why he talks to everyone at the diner, sometimes for too long. But it's also why everyone knows they can count on him if they need help moving a couch or jump-starting their car. Fear and care all mixed together. In 2019, scientists took the first picture of a black hole. Not Sagittarius A star, but a different one, M87 star. It's in another galaxy, 55 million light-years away. The image shows this sort of orange ring around a black center. The ring is the light from gas and dust being heated to billions of degrees as it falls in. The black part in the middle is the event horizon shadow. When I first saw that picture, I was at Nate's house. We were watching the news together. Nate makes this soup on Tuesdays with cabbage and potatoes and sometimes sausage if he's feeling ambitious. We were eating that, and when the image came on the screen, we both just stopped eating, stopped talking, because here was something that had been theoretical, something that existed in equations and calculations and careful observations, and now we could see it. Fuzzy and orange and far away, but real, proof. Nate said, "Looks like a donut." And I said, "Yeah." And then we kept eating soup. But I was thinking about all the people who worked on that image. Hundreds of scientists from all around the world, coordinating telescopes on different continents, processing data for years. All that work, all that collaboration, just to see something we can never touch, can never visit, that exists in a way we can barely understand. People did that. People who argue about politics and forget to return phone calls, and probably also stand in the grocery store trying to pick out cereal. But they came together and looked deeper into space than we'd ever looked before. That seemed important. Time works differently near a black hole. Einstein figured this out. General relativity. The idea is that gravity doesn't just pull on objects. It pulls on space-time itself. And the stronger the gravity, the slower time moves. So if you were watching someone fall into a black hole, which you shouldn't do because that would mean they're having a very bad day, you would see them slow down as they got closer to the event horizon. Slower and slower. From your perspective, they would never quite reach it. They'd just get dimmer and dimmer, redder and redder, until they faded from view. But from their perspective, they'd fall right in. Time would feel normal to them, right up until they reached the singularity and got stretched into something called spaghettification, which is the actual scientific term for being torn apart by tidal forces. Scientists have a sense of humor about that one, I think. But the point is, time is relative. It depends on where you are, how fast you're moving, how close you are to something massive. Which makes me think about how time feels different depending on what you're doing. How a good conversation with a friend can feel like 20 minutes, but actually be 3 hours. How waiting in line at the DMV can feel like 3 hours, but actually be 20 minutes. Or how when you're young, summers last forever. You have all this time, all this space. And then you get older and suddenly it's October and you can't remember what happened to July. My grandmother used to say that time speeds up as you age because each year becomes a smaller percentage of your total life. When you're 5, 1 year is 20% of everything you've experienced. When you're 50, it's 2%. I don't know if that's scientific, but it feels true. There's something called Hawking radiation. Stephen Hawking figured it out. He said that black holes aren't actually completely black. They emit a tiny bit of radiation. Quantum particles form in pairs right at the event horizon, and sometimes one falls in while the other escapes. So the black hole loses a tiny amount of mass. This means that black holes, very slowly, evaporate. They lose mass over time. Eventually, after an incomprehensibly long time, way longer than the current age of the universe, they disappear completely. Even black holes don't last forever. I find that both sad and comforting. Sad because nothing lasts. Even the most powerful, destructive, massive things in the universe eventually fade away. But comforting because it means endings are built into everything. Nothing has to carry its burden eternally. My friend Sarah, who teaches biology at the high school, says this is true for everything in nature. Trees die and become soil. Soil feeds new trees. Animals eat and are eaten. Everything is always becoming something else. She said it's only humans who try to make things permanent, who build monuments and write names on gravestones and try to hold on. But even gravestones weather. Even bronze plaques fade. She wasn't being morbid when she said this. We were planting bulbs in her garden, tulips for spring, and she was just remarking on how we bury these dried up little things in the cold ground, trusting that they'll come back as something beautiful. Which they do, usually, if the squirrels don't get them. I should tell you about the time I stayed up all night. This was about 6 years ago. I had been reading about circadian rhythms and how they're connected to the Earth's rotation, how our bodies evolved to follow this 24-hour cycle. Sleep when it's dark, wake when it's light. And I thought, well, what if I just stayed up? What if I tried to experience a full rotation of the Earth while being awake for all of it? So I made coffee, a lot of coffee, and I sat in my kitchen and I watched the sky go from dark to light and back to dark again. Around 3 a.m., things got strange. The refrigerator hum seemed louder. The shadows looked different. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Around 7 a.m., I felt okay again. The sun was up. I made breakfast. But by 2 p.m., I was having trouble remembering what I was doing. I'd walk into a room and forget why. I'd start a sentence and lose the end of it. By 8 p.m., I gave up and went to bed, slept for 12 hours. And when I woke up, I felt like I'd been on a trip somewhere far away. Like I'd left and come back, and everything looked a little different, even though nothing had changed. That's what I imagine time dilation near a black hole might feel like. Except, instead of just being tired, you'd be experiencing time at a fundamentally different rate than everyone else in the universe, which is probably worse than being tired. Choir practice was last night. We're working on a piece called O Magnum Mysterium. It's a Renaissance chant, Latin, about the mystery of birth and divinity and wonder. I sing bass, not very well, but consistently, which is what the choir needs, Connie says. She's the director. She says the bass section is the foundation. If we're steady, everyone else can soar. I like that responsibility. Last night, we were holding this one chord, 4-part harmony, and Connie had us hold it for a long time, longer than felt comfortable. My lungs were starting to ache, but we all stayed together, breathing at different times, but keeping the chord going. And in that moment, it felt like time stopped, or stretched. We were all creating this one sound together, and it existed in this bubble, and nothing else mattered except keeping that chord alive. When we finally moved to the next note, everyone sort of laughed and gasped at the same time. Connie said, "That's the pocket. That's what we're looking for." I thought about that on the drive home, about how sometimes when you're doing something with other people, something that requires all of you to be perfectly present and perfectly together, time does something weird. It bends. It opens up. Maybe that's not the same as a black hole, but maybe it's a small human version of space-time distortion. A pocket of something different, right in the middle of an ordinary Wednesday night. Here's something I wonder about sometimes. If you fell into a black hole, and time slowed down for you relative to the outside universe, would you know? Would you feel it? Or would it feel normal, like time always feels from the inside? I think it would feel normal. I think you'd just be falling, and from your perspective, everything would seem fine right up until it wasn't, which is maybe how most things happen. You're going along, living your life, and you don't realize you're in a pocket of altered time until you look back later and think, "Oh, that was different. That was strange." Like when my dad got sick. It happened slowly, and then all at once. For years he was just getting a little more forgetful, a little more tired, and we all adapted around it, the way you adapt to anything gradual. But then there was this one day I was visiting, and he couldn't remember my name. He knew me. He knew he loved me, but my name was gone, and I realized we'd already crossed some kind of horizon. We were already in the strange part where the rules were different. He died 2 years ago, peacefully, in his sleep. At the funeral, people kept saying, "At least he's not suffering anymore, and he's in a better place now." And I wanted to say, maybe. Or maybe he's just gone. Maybe there's no place. Maybe there's just the end of a thing, and the memory of the thing, and that has to be enough. But I didn't say that. I just said, "Thank you for coming." Because people need to believe in something after, something continuing, even if it's just an idea, even if it's just hope. The closest black hole to Earth is about 1,600 light years away. It's called Gaia BH1. It was discovered recently, in 2022, by watching a star wobble. The star is orbiting something we can't see. That's far enough away that we don't need to worry about it. We're safe, but there are probably millions of black holes in our galaxy alone, just out there. Silent, invisible, doing their work. Most of them aren't eating anything. They're just sitting in space, waiting. If there's no matter nearby, they're just quiet, patient. I think about that sometimes when I'm having trouble sleeping. All those black holes, just existing, not hungry, not angry, just there. It's almost peaceful in a way. I made scrambled eggs this morning. 3 eggs, a little milk, butter in the pan. I've been making eggs the same way for 30 years. While I was cooking, I was thinking about entropy. That's the idea that everything in the universe tends toward disorder. Heat disperses. Structures break down. Things fall apart. But here I was, taking these separate ingredients, eggs, milk, butter, and applying heat and motion and turning them into something cohesive, something organized. Scrambled eggs, which is the opposite of entropy, temporarily, and then I ate them, and my body broke them down into energy and waste. Entropy again. We're all just temporarily organized matter, fighting against the inevitable disorder of the universe. But the eggs were good. I added a little pepper. Some chives from the plant on my windowsill, and I sat at my kitchen table, eating breakfast, watching the light come through the window, and I thought, well, this is enough. This moment, this specific arrangement of atoms right now, eating eggs, being alive, even if it's temporary, even if it all falls apart eventually, it was still good. There's a theory that inside a black hole, space and time switch roles. That once you cross the event horizon, moving forward in time becomes like moving forward in space. And you can't stop it any more than you can stop moving forward in time out here. So you inevitably reach the singularity, not because you're being pulled there through space, but because you're being pulled there through time. The singularity isn't a place. It's a moment, a when, not a where. Your future, inescapably. I don't fully understand that. I'm not sure anyone does. It's one of those things that makes sense mathematically but not intuitively. But it makes me think about how we're all moving forward in time, and we can't stop. We can't go back. We can only move toward our own future, whatever that is, which sounds grim maybe. But it's also freeing in a way. You can't undo the past. You can't relive the good parts. You can only keep going, keep moving forward, keep being in the next moment, and then the next one. Like how you can't unscramble an egg. You can only make something new with what you have. I should tell you about Nate. I've mentioned him a few times. Nate's my friend. We've known each other since high school, which is a long time now. Nate worked at the power plant for 30 years. Maintenance. He'd come home with these stories about fixing things in the middle of the night, keeping the lights on for the whole county. He retired last year, and he's been adjusting. He says he doesn't know what to do with himself. He keeps waking up at 5 a.m., ready to go to work, and then he remembers he doesn't have work. So he makes coffee and sits in his kitchen and waits for the day to start. I've been trying to help. I invite him to do things. We go to the diner, we work on his car, we watch the news and eat soup, but I can tell he's lost. He had this structure, this purpose for so long, and now it's gone. And he's trying to figure out what comes next. Last week, he said, I feel like I'm just waiting for something. But I don't know what, and I didn't know what to say to that. Because I think maybe we're all just waiting for something. The next thing. The thing that will make sense of right now. But maybe there isn't a next thing. Maybe this is just it. This is the thing. Sitting in Nate's kitchen, eating soup, being together. Maybe that's enough. I hope it is. Scientists think that at the very center of a black hole, at the singularity, all our equations break down. General relativity says the density becomes infinite. Quantum mechanics says something else. They don't agree. This is one of the big problems in physics. We have two incredibly successful theories: general relativity for big things, quantum mechanics for small things, and they don't match up where they should. At the singularity, at the very beginning of the universe, maybe there's a deeper theory we haven't found yet. A theory of everything that unifies them. Or maybe the universe just isn't consistent. Maybe it has contradictions built into it. Places where the rules change, where things don't make sense. I think about that when I'm trying to understand people. When someone does something that seems to contradict who I thought they were. When I do something that contradicts who I think I am, maybe we're not supposed to be consistent. Maybe we're just collections of different rules that mostly work together, but sometimes conflict. Like how I love quiet, but I also get lonely. Like how Nate wants purpose, but he also wanted to retire. Like how I'm afraid of dying, but I'm also tired a lot. Contradictions. Singularities in the self. It's getting late now. I can tell by the quality of the silence outside. There's a particular kind of quiet that happens after midnight in the winter, when the wind has died down, when the last few people have turned off their lights. It's the sound of the world resting. I like this time. It feels spacious, like there's room to think. I've been talking for a while now. I hope that's okay. I hope you're still listening. Or maybe you've fallen asleep, which is fine too. That was part of the idea. Sometimes it helps to hear someone's voice, to know you're not alone in the dark. Here's something I learned recently. When black holes merge, when two of them spiral into each other and collide, they send out ripples in space-time. Gravitational waves. These waves spread out through the universe at the speed of light. And we can detect them now. We have instruments sensitive enough to measure these tiny distortions in space as they pass through the Earth. The first time we detected them was in 2015. Two black holes, each about 30 times the mass of the Sun, merged together over 1 billion light-years away. And the ripples from that collision finally reached us. 1 billion years later, the detector measured a distortion smaller than the width of a proton. We felt an echo from something that happened before Earth existed. I think about that when I'm feeling insignificant. When I'm worried that nothing I do matters. Because here we are, on this small planet, in this small solar system, in this one galaxy among billions, and we built something sensitive enough to hear the universe whisper. We looked up and said, "We want to know. We want to understand." And slowly, piece by piece, we're learning, not everything, probably not even close, but something, and that's pretty good. My grandmother used to keep a garden. Nothing fancy, tomatoes, beans, some flowers. She said gardening was about faith. You put seeds in the ground and you trust that they'll grow. You can't see what's happening under the soil. You can't rush it. You just have to wait and hope and keep watering. Some years were good. Some years the rabbits got everything. Some years there was too much rain or not enough. But she kept planting. She died when I was in college. I remember coming home for the funeral and seeing her garden all overgrown. Nobody had tended it that summer. And I thought, well, that's that. That's the end of that. But the next spring, tomatoes came up anyway. Volunteers from seeds that had fallen the year before. They grew wild, sprawling over the whole plot. We ate them that summer. My mom made sauce. We froze some. We gave them to neighbors. And I realized that my grandmother was still feeding us, still taking care of us. Through these plants that she'd never seen, from seeds she didn't know she'd planted. That's what I think about when I think about black holes evaporating, about things ending but also leaving something behind. An echo, a ripple. We don't last forever. Nothing does. But we affect things. We send out waves, and maybe a long time from now, someone will feel them and know that we were here. I'm going to wrap up soon. I know it's late. But I wanted to tell you one more thing. Last week, I was walking home from the diner. It was evening, just after sunset. The sky was that deep blue color it gets before it's fully dark, and I looked up, and I could see stars starting to appear, and I thought about how the light from those stars left them years ago. Decades ago, centuries ago for some of them. The stars I was seeing might not even exist anymore. They might have died already, collapsed. Maybe some of them became black holes. But their light kept traveling, kept moving through space, until it reached my eyes. Standing on a sidewalk in a small town in a particular moment, I was seeing the past, the universe's past, the light's long journey. And that felt important somehow, like a reminder that even when things end, even when they're gone, they can still reach us, still touch us, like my grandmother's tomatoes, like my dad's laugh, which I can still hear in my memory, like the echo of those merged black holes traveling across time. We're all connected to everything that came before, all the dead stars, all the lost people, all the moments that have passed. And we'll be connected to everything that comes after too. Our light is still traveling. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. I hope you sleep well. I hope you have good dreams, or no dreams, whatever you need. Thank you for listening. If you think about black holes tomorrow, that's okay. If you don't, that's okay too. They'll still be out there, quiet, patient, bending space and time, and we'll still be here, for now, living our small, strange, temporary lives, making breakfast, singing in choirs, standing in grocery stores, trying to be kind, sending out our own small ripples. Good night.